Kabwe is listed among the top 10 most polluted towns around the world. This is due to lead poisoning that occurred in the mining town spanning over 100 years. Today on News in Depth, we join Macpherson Mukuka as it tracks intervention by the Zambia Mining Environmental Remediation and Improvement Project being undertaken in Kabwe. I'm your host, Masauso Mukwayaya. The tale begins with 2-year-old Prosper and his grandmother. Follow through and stay tuned.
This is Prosper and his grandmother Margaret. We met the duo at their home in Katondo area in Kabwe. At 2 years, Prosper is already learning some house chores and seemingly enjoying one of the chores, washing plates with his grandmother. During his infancy, Prosper enjoyed crawling around the yard in the dust just like every other baby would do. However, the dusty environment that Prosper enjoyed playing in was not child-friendly. The backyard playground that he so loved almost became a source of misery. He unexpectedly became stunted, lost weight, and struggled to eat normally like other children his age. His grandmother Margaret Kabamba says she could not pinpoint what was wrong with Prosper, but adds that she had a feeling something was amiss. She was gracious enough to recount the ordeal with us.
Since birth, Prosper has not been very healthy. He had a very small body, and even his birth weight was 2.5 kgs. So this was not pleasing to me, and I kept on wondering why his body was like that.
Kabwe district in Central Province, famously known for its archaeological discovery of the broken human skull, was once an essential mining town for lead and zinc in Zambia. The mining activities stretched for about 100 years. The activities left large amounts of lead-contaminated waste in places that would later become residential areas. The mining activities, especially of lead, further caused extensive contamination of the topsoil, resulting from the dry deposition and oxidation. Although the activities were halted in 1994, following the closure of the mine shortly after it was nationalized, lead contamination and its effects on people is still rife around the mining area. 26 years later, homes, schools, and market areas are still contaminated with lead powder. The contamination has put Kabwe on the list of the most contaminated towns in the world. Past and recent medical research reveal that people in places near the mining area have been poisoned. The studies, however, show that children living in the affected areas are extremely at risk of being contaminated with lead dust.
Lead poisoning actually affects everyone, but we are more worried about the children because children are still growing. They are still growing, their brains are still developing, so if they get affected by lead at a tender age, there are so many things that can go wrong, one of which is cognitive development. Their cognitive functions might get affected. So because of that, I think as a Ministry of Health, we would want to focus more on this to try and protect them and make sure that they enjoy their childhood.
A few months ago, Prosper was screened at the local health facility and the lab test results revealed that he had high levels of lead in his blood. Medical personnel at the clinic quickly advised that Prosper gets on treatment to reduce the amount of lead poisoning in his blood.
For 1 week first.
They first gave him different medicines for 1 week. The second time they did the test and told us he was recovering well. They gave us some more medicines, this time for 2 weeks. We went back for the third time and he was tested and the results indicated that he was fine. Since then, Prosper has been healthy and all the complications he had were no more.
palino nshitawo n'obwafya bwonse twalisa n'omwana omubiri n'okukinja wakinja naye bose asamba n'okumoneka bataawe kyakinamba okulasa onsulukako omubiri.
Globally, lead is a well-known serious health hazard. It is believed that the mineral can cause anemia, loss of memory, and in extreme cases, can lead to death. In the 4 affected areas, Chowa, Katondo, mine area near Kasanda, and Makululu settlements, soil is highly contaminated and child exposure exists to date. The effects of the contamination are also felt in schools such as the mine school, which is just about a kilometer from the mining site. Lead poisoning has the potential of causing impairment in cognitive development, resulting in problems with concentration, memory, and learning.
We have about 2 or 3 pupils that are seriously affected. Their memory is affected. They are not stable. You find that most of the time they cannot concentrate on one thing. They are moving up and down. So that has posed a danger to the teachers because they love to first attend to this pupil before attending to the rest of the class. So that has affected the learning of some pupils.
Education authorities at district level have described lead poisoning in school children as a drawback in the delivery of quality education to learners in Kabwe.
You can't teach a child who is not okay. One of the symptoms of lead contamination is actually the IQ. So that is a challenge. We have now issues of slow learning, okay? Because the child is not able to articulate issues according to what is supposed to be or according to what we expect from that child. So it affects their IQ, and there are also other symptoms that will affect the child, which will also further affect their performance in class.
But not all hope is lost. The Zambian government is rolling out a World Bank-funded program to clean up the 4 affected residential areas of Chowa, Katondo, Kasanda, and Makululu. The project, dubbed Zambia Mining and Environmental Remediation Improvement, will also provide health care to children under the age of 15 in the 4 lead-contaminated townships.
The project has undertaken to treat up to 4,000 persons in Kabwe and conduct blood lead level testing of up to 10,000 persons. And to this extent, the project has procured medicines worth $2.5 million through the project. And this is an activity that is being undertaken in conjunction with the Ministry of Health in order to ensure that a large number of affected persons are captured. And we procured lead test kits to support the intervention, as well as diagnostic machines that are being used for this activity, which machines have been placed in 4 health centers within Kabwe.
Screening for lead poisoning and testing in children under 15 has been ongoing in health facilities around the mine area since April 2020. Our visit to Makululu and Katondo clinics found children in the company of their mothers queuing for screening.
So far we've screened about 1,024, and then we put 41 on treatment. Then we've weaned off for 46. We're remaining with 5 on treatment currently.
We've screened about 1,600 children. Out of that population, about 368 children have been found with blood lead levels of above 45 micrograms. So that represents about 21% of the children that we've seen.
10,000 children in the lead-affected areas have been earmarked for screening and treating. The district health office is so far happy with the progress done by the medical team in the affected areas.
So far from April to date, we have screened 5,519 children. Out of those, about 880 were found to have blood lead levels above 45 micrograms per deciliter. So out of this group, about 865 were commenced on treatment. And 100% of them, all those that were commenced on treatment, we've noticed a drastic reduction in the blood lead level.
For such an important program to yield desired results, community involvement becomes a critical component to ensure the project's achievements are long-term. The project has included community members as volunteers in the dissemination of information to affected communities.
The only way we can end this is two-way traffic, us and the mothers. The message that we are taking out there and the way the mothers are bringing the children here for testing and eventually put them on the medication will definitely end this thing. Only if they bring their children for testing, and those that are found to have lead in their blood put on the treatment, this will definitely end.
A vigorous education and awareness campaign is also ongoing in the district, targeting the people in the affected areas. The campaign involves dissemination of information about the symptoms of lead poisoning.
We want to target up to 30,000 children within Kabwe schools so that we can give them information and knowledge on how they can stay safe from lead poisoning. And this campaign is also going to be extended to the local population, and this is a campaign that we are undertaking in conjunction with the Ministry of General Education so that some of these activities can be incorporated into the school curriculum for the local children.
The project has engaged the Ministry of General Education to train teachers and safety health education and nutrition coordinators on lead awareness. The training also involves equipping the trainees with skills on how to identify signs and symptoms of lead poisoning in children.
Just a few weeks ago, we actually trained 12 teachers for a start because of the corona issues and everything. We needed to put precautions in place. So we have 12 teachers that have been trained so far to integrate this guideline, which is yet to be launched. And then we'll see, we're using a cascade approach where there will be further training other teachers. And then overall, we'll see a Kabwe which will be aware about lead.
Further, the Kabwe District Educational Board is incorporating parents in its lead poisoning intervention in order to be on the same page with them.
For every parent-teacher association, which is PTA, these associations that run the schools in the communities. So we are also integrating them in many of our interventions so that they are fully aware from the start. And bearing in mind that even when it comes to the screening, we cannot do that before the parent gives consent. So that's why even as we refer, or because we don't do it at school, we do it at the clinic. So even as we refer them to the clinics, the parents will be aware and will be encouraged and spread the word to the rest of the community to take their child for screening, because we'll just make them understand, to say, look at these symptoms, and we will not be able to remove lead from Kabwe. But if we can bring in these interventions to help, it will be a better community.
Schools are also in high gear. We learned that pupils in some schools have formed lead awareness clubs and do conduct community sensitization.
We have introduced the lead awareness club, and this is the club which is helping very much to sensitize the pupils, not only the pupils, even the teachers themselves, because the teachers are very much involved in this club. And the same club which is also going out to sensitize the community about the dangers of lead poisoning. So we are working very well with this office, that is the focal point persons. We have got 2 teachers here who are at the forefront to ensure that they sensitize the community.
Further health interventions have been put in place by the district health office.
We've been screening children, and those whose blood lead levels are above 45 micrograms per deciliter are commenced on some treatment to try and bring down the lead levels in the blood. But that cannot be done alone. Alongside treatment with the drugs that we're using, there's what we call remediation. So we do health education to the parents, the communities, to make sure those that have the resources plant grass around the surroundings, because you need to eliminate the source of lead.
The messages and interventions are noticeable and have brought hope to Prosper's grandmother and other members of the community.
I am urging my fellow parents to think and put the health of their children first. But the most important thing to do is visit the clinic. If the medical personnel don't find anything wrong with the child, they advise accordingly.
I am encouraging my fellow parents out there that lead poisoning is treatable. Take your children to the clinic for screening.
The clarity of the lead awareness messages has been noted by the health authorities at Katondo and Makululu. The two medical officers are happy with the response from the community members in their respective areas.
The response has really been overwhelming. We've had a very good response. Like I've said, we've just done this for about 3 months, and we've been able to get that number. The parents are really bringing their children because through social mobilization, they've come to know the effects that lead has on their children.
The response is so good so far. They come. Because our community members, they go there, sensitize them, then they come. So even during the weekend, we still screen them. It's every day. There's no specific days, Monday to Sunday.
Millions of tons of mining waste are completely uncovered, and lead-contaminated dust particles are blown to the areas around the mine area. Because of this, the ZEMREP project has included a voluntary remediation program in schools and homes within the high lead exposed areas.
Some of the contaminants have actually moved from the contaminated mine dump sites and gotten into the residential areas. And this is how these are getting to have impacts on the children. And so the project is going to conduct remediation through a voluntary process where household owners are going to come through, and we are going to conduct remediation of selected households within Kabwe. The other activity that we're going to undertake in Kabwe is the greening exercise and provision of water supply in some selected schools, just to ensure that our children have a cleaner environment in some of the selected schools. Again, within the same hotspots that we are talking about.
Additionally, the weed-clogged canal will be cleaned to create a smooth passage for lead-contaminated waste. This will also facilitate for the upgrading of the Kabwe solid waste dump site, which will serve as a landfill for contaminated material from residential areas.
This is a structure that is supposed to help to convey stormwater from some of the contaminated areas and to try and contribute towards the reduction of pollutants in the local environment. It's been in a state of disrepair, and the project is going to rehabilitate it so that we can improve the water flow, and therefore it is going to contribute to the reduction of lead pollution in the communities. The other intervention that will be undertaken in Kabwe is the construction of a sanitary and hazardous wastes landfill in Kabwe. We've got environmental and engineering design studies that are currently being undertaken in Kabwe. And the idea is when we conduct these cleanup activities that we are talking about, we must have a grave site for the contaminants that we're removing, particularly the lead, because we cannot afford to just throw it anyhow.
The impact of the remediation program has been felt at the mine school. The area is now being vegetated to avoid dust.
Where we are, before this project, it was about 1,000 PB per kg. But when they turned the soil, the top one was buried, and then the one which was down was put on top. When they came to test, it was reduced to less than 300, which is normal in a lead contaminated area. So that will have a very positive impact to the learning of the children and also to the community, because it will, the lead contamination and the lead poisoning will not affect our pupils.
The district health office has integrated lead screening, acquisition of essential medicines, and supply of high-energy food products into the main strategic plan to ensure exposed children are not malnourished.
We have planned through the project to procure some high-energy protein supplements to be given to children, because proteins and a few essential elements like iron, calcium displace lead from the body. So if a child is put on herbs or foods that are high in iron, calcium, as well as protein, we anticipate that the lead in the body will be displaced, and therefore we are able to see a reduction in blood lead levels.
While government has taken a hands-on and all-inclusive approach to address the issues of lead contamination in Kabwe, there are still challenges.
Some of the mothers actually do resist. They think maybe we are taking their children for something else. You know, it involves blood. But the moment we explain, take time to explain, and takes the other people time to understand, they slowly have started now at understanding the role of lead treatment support.
The challenges experienced by the community health volunteers are similar to those experienced at health facilities.
The only challenge that we have is parents to bring back their children for review. You will find that the children will come on their own without the guardians or the parents, so to say. So like that, it becomes very difficult for us to handle such cases.
When they come here, they give us wrong numbers and addresses. So even after screening, when that child may be supposed to be commenced on treatment, you try to call the number, it's not going through. Or someone else will answer to say it's a wrong number, and even wrong addresses.
However, the benefiting community members are urging parents to follow the guidelines given by the health personnel in preventing lead poisoning.
My call to the parents out there, not only the parents here in Mutwansofu, but the parents from all the areas in Kabwe that are prone to lead contamination, is for them to take their children for testing. They should take this one seriously, because lead poisoning is affecting the performance of their children in school.
The small-scale mining operations and the illegal mining outside the mine area also pose serious health risks for both workers and the surrounding communities. This is retrogressive in the implementation of the Mining Environmental and Remediation and Improvement Project.
You may be aware that we've got mining right holders within Kabwe. The compliance levels are certainly not the kind of levels that we would like to see. We've got a tow drain, for example, that runs around one of the mine areas. It's not in a state where it is able to serve the purpose of draining the contaminants that are escaping from the site. And we've got some materials also that continue to escape from that site in the form of dust. And the illegal mining activities means that the materials that are contaminated with lead are being removed from the sites where they're confined into the residential areas.
Government and its partners' recognition of lead contamination as a public health threat is what has resulted into the inclusion of the concern in the mainstream healthcare system to respond to the effects of lead exposure in the 4 communities of Kabwe. It is, however, expected that the mining environmental remediation and improvement interventions being implemented in Kabwe are sustained beyond the close of the project in June 2022.
This is where we come to the end of this week's edition of News in Depth, where we're looking at interventions by the Zambia Mining Environmental Remediation and Improvement Project being undertaken in Kabwe. I've been your host, Masauso Mukwayaya. Thank you so much for the privilege of your time. Pleasant viewing.